I really think a great state to be in is even in the middle of the challenges to try and be thankful for them. You know, it's like, thank you so much for this lesson that I'm learning it right now. It's very hard. Thank you, but I pray I'm delivered from it soon, kind of thing. When I'm explaining something to somebody, it's come from somewhere pre-linguistic. We aim at something wordlessly, and then thoughts come. I really think for most people who are habitually thinking, they're thinking without being aware that they're thinking, language is one of the worst ways to do it. There was a study I read recently about the link between curiosity and morality, and it's like a 1-to-1 correlation. It's the more curious you are, often the more morally good you behave. Yeah. Oh, if the podcast doesn't work out, you can always pivot to ASMR. Open an OnlyFans, you know. I'll be your first subscriber.
How much would you pay for that?
It depends on how much you're putting out.
Putting out.
Well, I do think our ability to impact the future that's what we're doing here.
Right.
That's what we're up to, is trying to behave in the world such that our future experiences, we like them more, whatever that means.
Welcome to The Ambiguous Truth. I'm your host, Anthony Mistretta. Today, we have the honor of speaking with a friend of mine. We met just a couple of months ago, but he's become truly one of my best friends. And you'll tell through the conversation that he is a genuine man of character. Drew really, I think, illustrates the qualities and characteristics of what it is to be a man. On top of that, he is an extremely intentional human being. There is no conversation topic too deep to go into with him. And I think he is one of the few gentlemen in my life that truly is the embodiment of love for himself, love for those around you, love for humanity. And I am so excited to share some of his ideas with the world. Welcome, Drew McDonald. Let's get on to the show. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming.
Dude, thank you so much for having me, man.
I'm so excited.
It's a little surreal.
Is this the first time you're doing a podcast?
Oh, this type? Absolutely. Yeah. Nothing like this ever before.
Nothing like this. This is not a very high bar.
I mean, you have quite the setup here. We're talking into these microphones. We got cameras. I can hear myself. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's true. It does feel really real when you have all of the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's like, for those of you who don't know, this is my apartment. Very obviously an apartment, but it works well. But it does feel real having microphones and headphones.
It's so nice. Yeah.
It's really nice. Cool. Well, can you just introduce yourself, Drew? Tell whatever you want to say.
Yeah. I'm Drew. I'm a software engineer. Been writing code for about 10 years now. Grew up in Alabama, in the Bible Belt, super religious. Made my way out to Colorado about almost 5 years ago now. Wow, time really flies. Been really enjoying my time here. It's been really different than everything I've grown up with so far. It's quite a culture shock coming out here, but that was the point. Sort of start whatever my version of a hero's journey was, set out from your parents' home and see what's out there. So
your version is a hero's journey.
I'm certainly trying to make it be that, but
it is.
Yeah, I don't really know too much what else to say, but yeah, I mean, we met rollerblading. That's been my huge community here in Denver. I moved here. I'd only been rollerblading like 2 months when I moved here. And I was here less than a week before I found myself at Denver Urban Skate Troupe meetup for the first time. And it's just an instant social circle here in Denver. So I didn't really have to go through the hard process of moving to a new place and having to find your people and your tribe. Like, I showed up and had a tribe, and I've been really grateful for that.
And it's a good tribe.
It's such a good tribe.
It's a good tribe.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
Because I grew up homeschooled my whole life. So that aspect of things has always been kind of hard for me. So showing up here and just having such a loving community of people who like doing a thing that I found I really like to do as well has been really cool. The skill aspect of it, the community, and then that's branched off into all these other different subgroups of dust, so it's been really wonderful. Case in point, what we're doing right now. So.
Yeah. It's a good community, and it can just, the tree branches extend into some really fun things, which a couple weeks ago, one of those fun things that was like dust adjacent was a festival that was on your farm.
Yeah. It was the Free Farm Festival, which, wow, it was so fun. It was a 2-day music and arts festival. We had 23 musical acts across 2 stages over 2 nights, and had like art clinics and yoga, comedy. It was really cool.
A fashion show.
How could I forget the fashion show?
I don't think I'll ever forget that.
So mind blowing. I didn't know what to expect with the fashion show, but wow, everybody knocked it out of the park. All the organizers, the MC for the fashion show brought a trumpet, and it was just so beautiful and amazing. Yeah, I was very on mushrooms for that fashion show as well. So that was definitely a highlight of the weekend for sure. That was a really good time.
Same. Could not have peaked at a better time. Like literally as I'm going out.
Yeah, Anthony, you were in the fashion show. Wow. So beautiful. Seeing you had hair in the space buns coming out when you're it's like a crop top, right? Or it was a vest.
Yeah,
That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so beautiful. We were like, I was really enjoying the whole fashion show for, 20, 25 minutes or so. I'm not sure how long it was going. And most of our friends ended up going last. Jackie, our designer friend, she was kind of the headliner of the fashion show. And we were like 20 minutes in, and I was like, where are my friends? I'm ready to see my friends. And then, y'all started coming out. It was so nice. It's so fun.
Because was it just me and Jarek who were in the first of the...
Yeah, so the non-Jackie line.
Yeah, non-Jackie. And then everyone from Dust was there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, her clothes, all crocheted.
Handmade crocheted. Yeah, so good. I have one of her handmade, I guess it's crochet. Well, I don't know if you crochet a dream maker, or a dream catcher, but yeah, I have a dream catcher of hers hung up in my room.
Were those hers in the dome?
Yeah. She came early and set them all up, and that was so beautiful. I know I was shilling those pretty hard while I was in the dome. Everyone in there was remarking on them, like, if you look, they all have a price tag. You could take them home.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were all for sale.
I didn't see that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a bummer. That would have been fun. Well, next, I want to get some of her clothing because that was pretty sick.
Yeah, I got one of her, I don't even know what you call it. It's like a pull, not a pullover, like a shawl kind of thing while I was there.
Like a dinner jacket type thing with no buttons.
I loved it, man. I
Wait,
wore
but
that
it had
thing.
Sleeves, right? Like
sleeves, yeah, sleeves and kind of open in the front. And I wore that thing shirtless underneath all day. It was, of course. It was the vibe. It really was.
Yeah, that was pretty spectacular. And the dome.
Oh, the dome. Yeah.
That I'm curious. I don't even know so you need to talk about the dome.
The dome. Yeah. So the dome is a geodesic dome style greenhouse that I spent a few months building in my shop from this company that produces plans called Trillium Domes. You just buy the plans and put it together. But yeah, started with a big stack of 2x4s and a gigantic industrial roll of polycarbonate, and spent a couple months building all these, basically the individual panels in the shop. And then once all the panels were mostly done, not all the way done, had a big event, the dome raising, I called it. Had everyone from Dust come out. The erection. Come out, and it took a couple tries. The first dome raising, we were really trying to figure out how the structure worked together, because it really wasn't clear. But we all learned a lot in that first dome raising. We got the first sort of 3 layers of panels up. And then unfortunately in the 2 or 3 weeks until the next dome raising, the wind took it So it knocked it all down.
Sad day.
Yeah, that was a rough sight to walk out to.
Yeah.
I'd been, every single day just kind of walking outside on the farm and looking over at it. And the one day I was headed out to dust, actually. And I looked over there and I didn't see it. I was like, no, where did it go? So yeah, the wind kind of picked, it was shaped like a big parachute at the time. So I really should have known better. The wind just picked it up and laid it on its back and broke 5 or 6 panels. So had to remake those and then schedule another dome raising. And wow, everyone really, really came together as a community to build that thing. And we stood it up in one day. It was so beautiful. And it was just in time for the festival as well. It was like an awesome community space for the festival. Not so much during the day because it was really, really hot in there. There's no windows. But wow, we did the 2 a.m. comedy hour in the dome. It was so nice. 30, 40 people packed in there.
Yeah, it was tight.
That was so fun. And yeah, I'm really excited for getting to use it as an actual greenhouse next year for the growing season. That'll be the greenhouse that the weed is going to grow in. So yeah, that should be a good time.
Yeah.
But also a community space for future events too. The energy in it is so nice. I feel like it's kind of halfway between a pyramid and a standard dome. I'm saying dome. It's not really like a half circle like people might be envisioning. It's how would you describe the shape of it?
I mean, it's like if you were to, it's sort of shaped like an onion, where like it comes to a point on the top, almost as if like, not the part of the onion where it has where it grows out of, not the tip that it grows to. If you were to like slice the bottom third, and so it's just like the structure of the onion going like that, it kind of looks like that, but then you got to slice the front off for the entryway. Right. So it's not a perfect circle either.
Somebody did refer to it as the glass onion. I guess there's like a show or something, the glass onion, but.
Have you not seen the glass onion?
I think I've seen part of it. I think I turned it on once.
Oh, I'm such a big fan of like the whodunit type of category. And so it's part of the Knives Out with like Daniel Craig as the investigator. So Knives Out was like the first one. It's actually based off of Agatha Christie. Agatha Christie novel of like a whodunit. There's a couple of them. And my understanding is that the Knives Out is not her work, but it's the same director as a lot of those. And so it's a similar style. Phenomenal. Daniel Craig, lots of
a little mystery.
Yeah, mystery, exactly. What's her name? Ana de Armas.
Oh yeah, I like her.
I like her too. How can you not? If I pronounced that correctly. I know I didn't, but whatever. But anyway, Knives Out or Glass Onion is the second one, and there's this glass structure kind of similar to that. So yeah, that would make sense. Now you gotta watch it.
Kind of looks like that, yeah.
I don't take it you're a big movie guy though.
I'm really not. There's a lot of movies that I'll mention having not seen. Be like, how have you not seen that? I'm like, well, I don't know.
I get it. All right. Well, I think that's a good background. Let's get into the meat of it.
Yeah.
So I kind of I'm not going to talk to you about the Denver stuff. You mentioned something about like the culture shock.
Yeah.
But I think what you painted a pretty clear picture that you're the type of person who you dip your hands into a lot of things. I'm curious if that was always the case when you were younger, or were you kind of just focused on the few things that you were told to focus and you started to figure out kind of what things you were more interested in?
That's a really good question. I think a lot of things had been decided for me as a child. And I really didn't do a whole lot of exploration. For example, I grew up with a heart condition where the doctor said I could only play baseball. He called it a stand-around sport. And so just by default,
which is true.
Yeah, it is. Even more so, I played catcher mostly. So really just sitting in the same spot a whole lot of the time.
No shit. I had no idea.
Yeah, I played for 11 years. But it was just kind of by default. So
I was mostly talking about the heart condition. So
oh, really? Yeah.
I don't know. Do you still have the condition?
In my last pediatric cardiologist visit, they could no longer hear the murmur. So they were like, you're good. And I haven't seen one since then. But it's called post-aortic stenosis. Basically, I have a valve in my heart that's a little misshapen. And so rather than allowing blood to pass through it, kind of shoots it out. And it actually shoots it out so fast that it impacts the opposite wall. So that's kind of bulged out a little bit. Yeah. So there was a pretty distinct like sound they could hear from that for a while. It'd go in for like a yearly echocardiogram. My parents were so worried about it. Basically that kind of thing. They're like, if you're impacted in the chest too hard, your heart could stop or something. That was the big fear that they'd always say. But it never ended up being a huge issue growing up. But yeah, that was one thing that, yeah, my default sport was just kind of baseball. Um, yeah, I really know. Like the other things that were really chosen for me were the homeschooling. I really had no say in that. If I had a say in it, I wouldn't have been homeschooled.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, I'm really glad that I was.
Yeah.
But in the moment, wow, such resentment I harbored because I just wanted to go to a real school and be around like my peers. But now in hindsight, I'm so grateful for.
What are some of those things that you got out of homeschooling that you're grateful for that you don't think you would have gotten otherwise?
Big picture wise, is because I'm sitting here now. I really wouldn't want to be anywhere else in just my life in general. My whole life, I'm really invested in everything that's going on. I'm really interested by it and fascinated by it, and I really wouldn't have wanted it to be any other way. And so knowing that I just would have turned out a completely different person with different interests and different social groups and probably different cognitive abilities if I went to a public school. The public school near me was not renowned for its academic prowess. A little anecdote: the surrounding schools. I grew up like kind of rural Alabama, not in the middle of nowhere, but kind of rural. And the surrounding schools would have the high school is called Brewer High School. They would have a Brewer Day once a year where they would just dress up like rednecks and make fun of them. So that would have been the one I went to. So I had a lot of friends who went there, and I was really, when I was in it, I really wish that I could just spend the day with them, because that's what I really saw school as, was getting to hang out with your friends all day. Probably it's really not the case, but that's what I saw it as, and that's what I wanted. But man, I got probably not the best education outside of like math and science. I had a really wonderful science teacher who taught like kind of collegiate style classes, where she had like a lab in her backyard full of lab equipment and would host these, the wait list to get on in these classes was so long. But she would teach these phenomenally high level, like really quality science classes, physics and earth science and biology and whatnot. So I got a really good science education from her. Everything else, not so great. English was just, my parents would give me workbooks, and it's like, just do what's in the workbooks kind of thing. But yeah, really, really grateful for that. I went to community college, actually graduated high school when I was 15, and started community college when I was 16. And I remember my first physics class, it's like, physics 1 or whatever. I attended every single class up until the first test. And I took the first test, and I was like, oh, this is way easier than Miss Simmons's physics class. And so I only showed up for tests after that and did great. So
no shit.
Yeah.
At 16.
At 16. I was really, really grateful for that. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned that you've been fascinated by kind of the direction of your life and just like how it's come to be. Has that always been a part of you, where you've just been so interested in the why? Because one of the things that drew me to you, one of the things that drew me to Drew was just like your innate interest and curiosity in the world and how it works and how you fit into it, things of that nature. And you kind of alluded to that by saying, through your homeschooling journey. Has that always been a part of you, or was there a point where that shifted?
There's a really stark point where that shifted, I'd say. After community college, I went to Auburn University and was there for a while. I really didn't know what I wanted to do, but I chose aerospace engineering. I got towards the end of that program and realized I hated it. I wasn't happy, and I quit. Took a year off and came back doing software engineering, which is what I do now. So I'm really grateful for. But only after one semester of the software engineering curriculum, I found in the city of Auburn like a full-time salaried software engineer job. This is the job I would want to have after I graduated. So I was like, well, I don't need to finish school now because I just have the job. And so I left school again. And it was really just kind of a soul-sucking office job, just had to be at my desk every day at 8, dressed in business casual. And I really didn't enjoy it. I was really, I'm not going to use the word depressed, but it was just going through the motions, just going to work and really not knowing what my future was going to look like. And, um, not unhappy with where I was. I was able to buy my first home relatively young in the town, and that was good. And I had, friends in the area, but I was still living, just a couple hours from where I grew up, and I really wanted to get out of there. And it wasn't until I had my first psychedelic experience that really started to recontextualize a lot of things for me. And so after that is really when I started to get really fascinated by everything that was going on. The way that what I thought was happening in the world, I realized was very different than what was actually happening in the world. And I became kind of obsessed with figuring out, okay, what is actually happening? What is going on here in this place? Why are we all here? What are we up to? And since then, I've just been like really blessed to be in an environment where I can ask those big questions, comfortable enough where I can, spend the cognitive energy, burn the calories on, what is essentially nonsense in terms of survival and making it in life. But some really big questions that I really like to get to the bottom of. And that's been really fascinating. That's been fully afforded by my history as, growing up homeschooled and finding myself where I am now. So, yeah.
Can you answer those questions to the best of your ability right now? I know the answer objectively might be no, but
I don't think anyone, I think if someone spent their entire life even going down the correct direction, you would still end up at what amounts to, rounding to 0%, understanding 0% of what's going on here. But just trying to, strive to approach 1% is really fun.
And it's you're not scratching the surface. You're like gently rubbing
kind of
a finger.
feeling the surface. They're like
yeah.
approaching the surface a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I've, spent a long time trying to develop my internal model of what I think is going on here. And it's really changed so much over the last decade and really the last 8 years or so, I'd say.
And I'm sure it will continue to.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure.
So give it to us.
10 years from now, I believe it'll be totally different. But no, what I think is going on right now is sort of a spiritual exercise. I mean, there's really a ton of different ways of even approaching that question, but really a spiritual exercise in, learning to love one another, I think is a huge part of it. Learning to love one another and let go of the parts of us that separate us from one another. And, my physics background, I really don't like to just wax poetic about things. I really like to have, my beliefs instantiated in sort of a rigid metaphysics with pretty rigid rules. So I've been really developing that over a few years, leaning into things like, Rosicrucianism, meditation's been a huge part of my life, really getting in there. Vipassana retreats, these 10-day silent meditation retreats. I was trying to figure out what's going on. So
what's Rosicrucianism?
Rosicrucianism is, it's like the Order of the Rose Cross, right? It's this old sort of like esoteric occult group of sort of initiates. Rudolf Steiner was a huge initiate in Rosicrucianism. So they believe in, the influence of sort of non-human beings in the world and their effect on us. A really huge aspect of Rosicrucianism is the idea of Ahrimanic versus Luciferic influences. So like the Ahrimanic influence is sort of almost analogous to Satan. So like a lot of people think like Satan and Lucifer are like the same being. They're kind of different ends of the spectrum. Neither are good, but Satan's more of like the three-dimensional sort of like, worldly sort of gnarled being people kind of associate with Satan, whereas Lucifer is kind of the other end of like sort of a really like out there kind of, think like an Ahrimanic influence, somebody who really takes that too far, somebody who wants to establish wealth in the world and power and just like have all the sex they can and just like lord over people. like a dragon, and then the Luciferic impulse is somebody who really is just about really ecstatic states of being, just like really sort of throwing this physical body off to the side. So heroin addicts would be like a really good example of someone who's really influenced by like the Luciferic impulse. So yeah, the whole idea behind Rosicrucianism is like, not the whole idea, but that's one of the main ideas, is that these two influences are really at play here, and that Jesus actually represented the perfect middle path between those two influences. So he kind of, you're not going to not be influenced by those things, but the best you can kind of hope for is going right in between them, sort of, 1 foot in the world and 1 foot in heaven.
Yeah.
That's sort of the main idea that they espouse. So.
Right. So it's not so much like there's just a good and an evil and a good and a bad.
Right.
It's that there's these two contrasting forces that have good qualities and bad qualities inherently. And if you go too far one direction, then you're going to soak up all the bad in that. And if you go too far the other direction, you're going to get all the bad in that and not the good in the other.
Exactly. Yeah. I think people, when they think of Jesus, they think of like there's bad over here and there's perfectly good over here. And that's Jesus, where it's like, no, like there's a middle good, and then you can stray on either side.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, look at bipartisan politics.
Yeah. Don't get me started.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So do you see that there is like good and evil in the world?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does that fit with the Rosicrucian thesis?
So I think the middle way is trying not to be influenced by these things. And it is the path towards, what's the right word here? It's the right path back to source, like back to the monad, referred to like by the Stoics, which is like the source of all things, of love and truth and knowledge, right? And I think good is anything that strives to reconnect us with that, with the source of love and truth that we come from. And anything evil is seeking to keep others away from that for their own benefit. So, yeah, like things, influencing somebody's free will, for example, like that's a huge spiritual idea, in that like it's a really big no-no to impact somebody's free will. Like huge law against nature, like you really can't do that. And so like these evil influences, like they try and get you to buy in to the world here, either to the world here or to totally casting out the world here, because both are departures from the path back to source.
Those are the two extremes of the Luciferian. Mm-hmm. What was the other one?
Ahrimanic. Yeah, Ahriman, the spirit of Ahriman. Yeah.
Can you give an example of how one might modulate another person's free will?
Oh yeah, I mean murder, for example. Like that's the ultimate. Like you are taking their free will, from them, just objectively. So that's probably the most stark example.
And you had a brief stint as a free will denier.
I did. Yeah.
I'm curious to hear a little bit about like what were the things that sort of led you, other than Sam Harris, what were sort of the things that sort of led you in that direction, and then what was it that changed your mind?
Yeah. So in that psychedelic experience I mentioned, in 2017, coming out of that and realizing that the way I'd been behaving felt like it had been under my control. And then from this other point of view, I realized that it was just things happening. From that point of view, what you call yourself is very different than what we'd call ourselves here. And, from that point of view, ourself, what we call here, is like really not in control the way we think we are. I really don't think, to this day, I don't think people have the type of control over themselves that they think that they do.
Right.
And being like really shown that really starkly was pretty wild. Because, I don't want to get too deep into that experience, but it was an experience of, sort of having something else come take the reins, and just I wasn't even there to watch. I was there, in retrospect, I can think about that experience, but there was no Drew home to be behaving.
You weren't driving.
No, 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 no. It was something else. And so, yeah, I came home and I was, what was that? What was going on? And I discovered Sam Harris, and his talk on free will really, really influenced me. In his book on free will, I've read that a couple times, and I still recommend it to anyone. I think it really is a better way of viewing the world and how people behave in it than, this idea that everyone's in perfect libertarian control of themselves. But what really started to take me out of that was my first 10-day Vipassana retreat. Going into it as a sort of materialist, determinist, free will denier, I was really going into it as like a biohacking exercise almost. Like, okay, if I don't have the type of free will that I thought I had, then what I can do is make decisions, irrespective of my free will, that I know are good for me, if that makes sense. Like, it's kind of hard to talk about because it's still like me making the decision. But I was going in there, I'm like, okay, well, if I'm influenced by all these things over which I have no control, I'm going to learn to sit down and not be influenced by anything. I'm going to learn how to sit down and behave myself for 10 hours a day for 10 days and really get in there. Just as a form of trying to establish more of a feeling of free will. And I ended up having what was kind of a classic religious experience on day 7 of that retreat that really got me thinking about the world. Even, I had gone through this one huge shift of how I thought about things, and then this really started shifting it again. It was a beautiful experience that I had of, feeling, being spoken to, and like very, very scary in the time, the feeling of like, am I losing my mind kind of thing? Like, what's going on? But just a feeling of such love and compassion and, being bathed in white light and just, these messages. And it's like, okay, I'm not sure this is all just neurons firing anymore. I think there's something else going on here. And it still took me quite a while to become okay with, believing or allowing myself to the freedom to believe, non-materialism. But wow, what a gift that has been. Materialism is a great step to really go to the logical conclusion of, which I believe is the denial of free will. I think that is really liberating, but it's just another stepping stone down a path, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Materialism has come up on kind of my radar a lot recently with telepathy tapes and things like that. Yeah. Wow. And I think that, seeing what's happening now, it feels like a big, that kind of shift, that paradigm shift. The sooner it happens, the better. But it's also hard. You mentioned your religious background, and I had a very similar experience. It was Christian school for 14 years, and then raised Catholic. You have the Mass on Sundays. You have the Catholic school also on Sundays. So I had like 4 days a week of chapel, Bible class 4 days a week.
Oh my gosh.
That's just school, Mass every week. And then
I didn't know you were deep in it like that. Wow.
Yeah. And so it's, going to college, I completely went away from any sort of religion, and only like recently, certainly not going towards religion, but going towards spirituality and that concept. I don't love religion, but I'm starting to understand that side of things a little bit more. And it's hard. There was resentment. There was, frustration. And I think I've come to some similar conclusions as you, of like being happy with where I am today. And it's like, well, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for this 14 years.
Yeah. It's really, really important. Like, say what you want about organized religion. And I've definitely said what I want to, like, definitely have my thoughts. I grew up Southern Baptist, and they do instill, like, at least they try. I mean, I don't see a lot of them practicing it, but, the words of Jesus are very important. Treat others as you want to be treated.
Well, and that you just said the danger of religion, right? They, they try to instill the moral, compass, and they try to instill the morals that Jesus is preaching, but
Mm.
how effective are they really with that?
Right.
I mean, I don't think I was a piece of shit, but
Mhm.
I definitely have not, my moral compass is strengthened not through religion, but through other things.
Yeah, I mean, you're super curious as well. There was a study I read recently about the link between curiosity and morality, and it's like a 1-to-1 correlation. It's the more curious you are, often the more morally good you behave. So
Really?
yeah, when I find people who are really curious and I see them asking a lot of questions, I sort of resonate with them right off the bat. Because I'm like, okay, this person is somebody who thinks about things for the sake of thinking about them. That means they're earnestly trying to figure out the best way to behave.
Right. Yeah. That's fascinating. Can you
Mhm.
send that to me later if
I
you
will,
find it?
yeah.
I'm really curious about that.
Curious about the curiosity study.
Yeah. I want to read that research. That's fascinating. Yeah, I want to hear a little bit about I do want to hear a little bit about your views on the world.
Yeah.
And I know that's a really broad subject.
Mm-hmm.
You look like you need some water. Do you need
Yeah,
some
I mean,
water? Go get some water.
a little my
Yeah.
little tonic here.
Social tonic. Um, do you have any there's so many things that we talked about. I think
Mhm.
the last time we had some one-on-ones together, we talked a little bit about some of the your views on the world.
Mhm.
And that's what really got me into the one, and that's what I think got me to I had started reading How to Higher Worlds, but I
Yeah.
hadn't really like, all right, let's sit down and get on
Yeah.
this. Yeah. Um you talked a little bit about 7 dimensions,
Mhm.
sort of like an octave.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a fascinating concept.
Yeah. I really like that. Take a lot of that from, I really like Nikola Tesla. He says to understand the world, you have to think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. If you're thinking in terms of frequency, you're automatically thinking in terms of octaves and being able to stack them on top of one another and things like that. So yeah, I think those are also analogous to our energy centers in our body, our chakras. Um, and yeah, I think well, a lot of what we're talking about comes from the law of one raw material, which I really enjoy. I think it's really fascinating. Um, they, for those not familiar, it's this group of sort of spiritual researchers went around the world to these different groups who claim to channel different beings, non-human beings, whatever. And they, went and learned from all of them the different protocols that they use to contact these different beings. And they developed their own protocols, and then they, claimed to have their own sessions of contacting this being called Ra, who had a lot of really interesting things to say about spirituality and the world and sort of what's going on here. And obviously, you have to take these things with a huge grain of salt because, it could, obviously amount to be a very intricate, well thought out theater exercise. But the material in the book it really resonates with me a lot in a lot of different ways. One of which is this idea of like the 7 dimensions or the 7 densities, which correspond to again the different energy centers we have in our body. So according to this material, we are kind of 3rd density beings, sort of living primarily out of our 3rd energy centers, our sacral energy center, which is really associated with our ego and separateness and, sort of action in the world and, individual identity. And we're striving to sort of try and live from our next energy center, the 4th energy center, where we become a 4th density being. And so there's metaphysical connotations there as well in terms of, a 4th density being is sort of a member of a hive mind kind of thing. But the important thing is that a 4th density being is living from their heart center. And so I really resonate with that. According to Ra, there's 2 ways to make that leap. There's, the book is called The Law of One. It's the law of one material. And basically the idea is there's only one thing. We're all one thing. We're different expressions of one thing. And to progress on this journey, you have to polarize yourself one way or the other. You think of, doing work in the world, electromagnetic work, you're generating polarization one way or the other. And so there's 2 different sort of ways you can polarize yourself through these different energy centers as you move through these journeys of multiple lives. This isn't just a one shot go. There's the service to others path and the service to self path. And, according to the book, the way to jump from third energy center to fourth would be living from your heart centers. You have to be either 51% polarized towards serving others or 95% polarized towards serving yourself. So that would look like, it really look like evil from our point of view. But again, from the point of view of everything is one, there's only one thing. So it really doesn't matter if you're serving yourself or others. It's all the same thing anyways. Just sort of pick one in order to generate this polarization to move through the energy centers. And the idea is that it's sort of an exercise that the one is doing to know itself. So I'm not saying I fully take that on board as my worldview, but I really enjoy a lot of the like nitty gritty descriptions of things in the book.
Well, I think similar to like the Bible, even if I think there's a lot of truth in the Bible, right? But I think there's hyperbole. There's obviously some stories as well. And that doesn't mean that those aren't good mental exercises, right? They're not problematic. They're not, even if they're not 100% accurate, they might still be good lenses to view things through, just as thought experiments.
Yeah.
I asked my dad, do you think that morality or religion is necessary to teach, morality and ethics? He's like, no. I was like, well, why?
What are we doing?
Yeah, what are we doing? Like, why'd you shove Catholicism and Christianity down your throat? He's like, because it's easier. And I think that's probably a common answer, is like it's a simple framework to understand, but potentially for the more curious people out there who are potentially more skeptical too, like wait, why is this the way? Why is this the way, the truth and light? Let's get down to it. But if you can have that doctrine lead people down a path and they're actually acting good and they're actually doing thing with, in service to others, it's not really a bad thing.
Right.
It's only a good thing. But I think it can be dangerous for those who question it, because for me, it felt like the resentment that I was working through was like, well, like, what is the truth, right? Like, I threw everything away because I was like, start from a blank slate. Like, we're just going to start from a blank slate and we're just going to figure things out. Like, we did, like, ignore everything that we learned for the past decade, 2 decades.
That's wild you say that. I described my journey in the exact same way. There's a point where I'm like, okay, get rid of everything and just experience and watch how reality behaves relative to my behavior and use that as my guide.
Exactly. And I think that's a necessary part of the journey, is you kind of have to erase that Etch-a-Sketch.
Wow, Etch-a-Sketch is a big theme here.
There's going to be no one who listens to that. It's like, why are they laughing at that? You had to be there.
Had to be there.
But truly, you did have to erase the whiteboard or whatever. And I think you have to start with just like, start from square one. And then you can get to a point where you're like, okay, maybe not everything in the Bible is right, but I don't have to throw all of that away. Let's actually absorb it. Let's reabsorb that back into my brain and into my actions even. And so it's not, you erase it, but that doesn't mean that you've forgotten everything, right? It just means that you're able to look at it from a new perspective.
I definitely threw out the baby with the bathwater with the Bible for a long time, because again, so much resentment. I was like, wow, like, the God of the Old Testament is
that not evil?
He's evil.
Right?
Yeah, I think he's evil. And what is it? He's referred to in some traditions as like the demiurge. It's basically like the evil lesser God who's sort of the Lord of this domain. It's like, what kind of God wants you to kill animals and burn them so he can enjoy the pleasing aroma? Like, I don't know about that, man.
When I was going through my sort of journey away from religion and people asked me if I believed in God, I always said a similar thing, which was like, I believe there's something out there, but it's not the God in the Bible. And now I think that there's some of the God that's out there that is in the Bible, and some of it that I don't think is in the Bible. Or, if it truly is a source, yes. If it's the one, it is the source, it is, then I guess there then technically that is the same God. But I don't think it's possible for me to think of that God as the true God.
Right. I mean, as far as the Bible goes, the God that Jesus was talking about, like, yeah, I like that guy. I like that guy. He says he's already inside us. And I believe that. So very different than the God of the Old Testament. So
Me too. And I think one thing that's shifted too is I've become so much more optimistic about the world as I've moved away from religion, which I think so many people find religion to bring hope. And I get it. I do. But I struggle doing things for the sake of doing things, right? And if you tell me to be a good person because, or like, oh, well, you want to avoid eternal damnation. It's like, what the fuck is eternal damnation? I can't say fuck. Fuck that. So it's, but if you, it's like, I mean, it's also like never take the Lord's name in vain. And that's a very different thing than not cussing, right? And treating your body as a temple is a different thing than not getting tattoos. And so there's all these interpretations of the literature that is not, actually what the intent is, and people manipulate it. But that's man, right? Man is going to manipulate for self. And there we are, religion.
Yeah, it's like the story in the Bible where, if a woman is found to not be a virgin on her wedding night, then you take her to her father's doorstep and stone her in front of him. It's like, was that written by an omniscient, all-loving God, or is that written by some jealous, horny old men, dude? Like...
I don't know.
Yeah, big mystery there.
Yeah. And I really love the concept of the collective consciousness too.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think it's, there are things that are coming out now that are making that more, I don't know, believable, for lack of a better term. And it's like, because I've always struggled with, we were taught materialism, and that's most people probably, whether they know it or not, that's the doctrine that they follow. Materialism being, in order for something to be provable or just believed, then it must have some sort of materiality to it.
Yeah.
So observable. Gravity is not physically observable or visually observable, right? But you can measure it.
Yeah.
Right. That being materialism. Whereas I don't know what the next step is, or just a non-materialism, I guess, is just the belief that there is something that is not observable nor like strictly measurable, yet provable to a certain extent that it exists.
Yeah, I think my idea of materialism is that, the world is constituted of atoms, which are made of, quarks or whatever, and whatever they're made of, and that's all there is. And there's nothing else. But, the math there breaks down beyond the Planck scale anyways. So we're really just talking about a very narrow band of
reality.
Yeah. If the math stops working at a certain point, then it's good math. It serves its purposes. We can engineer things with it, for our three-dimensional materialist purposes, but it does not explain what's happening here.
Yes. I think that's exactly right. I liked your, the concept of memory. And can you share your take on that, just for everyone who didn't hear it?
Yeah. A little bit of background, little context. I really am a firm believer in the idea of the ether, or maybe a different word for space-time itself. I think that's sort of what's happening here is, as a little thought experiment, I really go crazy thinking about waves and part of the particle wave duality. I think it's nonsense. I think light is a wave. It's always been a wave. It's not a particle. So you can measure any wave to elicit point-like properties. You could even do it with sound. They're called phonons. It's like you can do whatever you want. But I think it's all waves all the way down. And if you think about waves, a wave is moving through what it is made out of. So a wave in the ocean is moving through the ocean and is made out of the ocean. If you have a rope and you perturb it, the wave is made out of the rope and is moving through the rope. And I ask the question, okay, well, what is an electromagnetic wave? What is waving? What is it? And they say light is an electromagnetic wave, and they say, okay, it's in order to move through empty space, because space is just empty, it's actually it's photons, and so it's like a massless particle, but it still has momentum, and that's how it can traverse a voidless space. And I think that's nonsense. I think there's an ether. I think it mediates all electromagnetism, and we are fundamentally electromagnetic beings. We're 99.999% empty space because that's what atoms are. So yeah, I really think that we are fundamentally electromagnetic beings mediated by this ether, right? This field. And so the idea to me, and this isn't my ideas, I take this from Rupert Sheldrake. He doesn't talk about the ether. He talks about the morphic field. He talks about morphic resonance. And the idea that our memories are stored in our body or brain somewhere, like a computer, is kind of nonsense to me. Like, that really doesn't make sense. You have stories of, children experiencing memories from past lives that end up affecting change in the real world that, you can be corroborated. And so my idea of memory is, everyone has a particular resonance. And when you recall a memory, I believe you are attuning to the moment in the past. You're resonating with the moment in the past to bring about an experience now where it causes an experience inside of consciousness. I think, consciousness is, this three-dimensional consciousness is also mediated by this etheric field. And so, yeah, like, what do you resonate with the most that's not this moment? Well, it's probably one moment ago. That's why it's so easy to remember what just happened, because we're basically resonating with it. It's very easy to recall. The further back you go, it's harder to resonate with those moments. So it's, the memories get more fuzzy.
Is that because your resonance is changing, is evolving?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, I think we're always changing. Some people more than others, but I think emotion plays a really strong role in that as well. I think emotions are a very strong sort of reverberation in the etheric field. And so the memories that we have where there's a really strong emotional component, either positive or negative, I'm not making any value judgments here, but those memories are easier to resonate with because it's a stronger frequency. And it's just easier for us to resonate with them because it has a larger impact on the field as a whole. And yeah, I think that's what we're doing with memory. And I think, it gets even weirder from there. I think people can resonate with moments in their future. Most people I know have some sort of precognitive experience that they can talk about, maybe one or two. Even the feeling of thinking of a friend you haven't thought of in a long time, and then they immediately text you. Like, I feel like a lot of people are familiar with that experience. So I think we can likewise resonate with moments in our future, which is probably more fuzzy because I think, whereas the past is more, we see it as fixed. The future is more this probability, possibility space, future potential resonances. But I do think there's interplay there. I think the etheric field doesn't care about when.
Yeah. So speaking of the etheric field not caring about when, what is time?
So time exists only in consciousness. If there's no consciousness, there's no time. Specifically this three-dimensional consciousness that we're having here. I think there's likely other forms of consciousness that experience a different form of time, but consciousness detects change. If there's nothing changing, there's nothing to perceive. And I think that's the role of time. It is the function of reality that allows us to have experience. And I think that is what it is. It really doesn't go beyond that. In physics, there's no arrow of time in any of the equations. They can go either way. All the equations work both ways. It just happens to be that we experience it this way. And it just mediates this experience we're having here, which I think is, again, fundamentally a spiritual exercise.
So it's only something that's experienced on Earth, or in the three-dimensional world that we know it, that we exist on, which could include other planets and things like that. But
that's a lot harder to talk about, I think, because I think there are these other beings which I believe are real that exist, from our perspective outside of time and space, but they might perceive a different form of time for all we know. I think that's a really hard thought experiment to wrap your head around.
Yeah. And also I think with time being something that, if people can see the future, which there are many examples of people who have, it's not even predicted things. It's like they've seen things. We'll get into perhaps remote viewing.
Remote viewing,
They
yeah.
view things in the future. Then doesn't that mean that that future does not exist in a time in the future? Maybe it exists now, just in a different capacity. Like, because there isn't past, there isn't future.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
only now.
I think it's only now. Yeah.
Right.
It's only ever been now.
Right.
Yeah. Our ability to perceive time as far as our three-dimensional bodies goes is mediated by our memory, which again is the field. So, I'm sorry, what was the question?
Well, I guess I'm curious, like if you, how can you have both of these things exist simultaneously, which is ironic. But for the experiment, how can you have a world in which people can see the future and know it to become true, and have a world where you can manipulate the future?
Right.
How do those two things exist at the same time? I guess my question.
That's a hard one. That's getting into almost solipsistic territory.
What's
I think solipsism is the idea that it's only you. It's you and your experience, and everything else is sort of a play for you. So the idea that you're manipulating the future, okay, are we manipulating everybody's future or just your particular one? That's something I don't have a good answer for, because I do think our ability to impact the future is, I mean, that's what we're doing here.
Right.
That's what we're up to, is trying to behave in the world such that our future experiences, we like them more, whatever that means. And I have an example of this, of sort of the simultaneity of time correlated with the creation of the future. I've told you this example before, but I'll run through it again. I think a lot of people have the experience of they're about to leave the house and they have that feeling of, oh, I'm forgetting something. What is it? It's like, I know I'm forgetting something, and they can't think of what it is. And then they'll leave. They're like, I don't know what it is. Like, I probably didn't forget something. And then they'll leave the house. And then at some point later, they'll remember what they forgot, what they left the house without. And in that moment, there's an emotional reaction. Probably, you're probably not enjoying the fact that you forgot something you needed. And then you remember back to that moment when you had the opportunity to remember to bring it. And you'll be kind of frustrated with yourself that you forgot it. And in my mind, those events are in co-creation with one another. The feeling you have of, oh, I know I'm forgetting something, is almost being resonated back into the now from this future state of this emotional reaction you will have when you remember what it is you forgot. And it's almost an opportunity for a version of your future that you ended up not wanting to have, to communicate back to a version of yourself to give you an opportunity to change it.
Right.
And so from that point of view, there's all kinds of future events that are, future versions of ourselves, this possibility, probability space. And there's some of them that in hindsight, we wish we hadn't have gone down. And I think we're constantly in communication with all these different versions of our future. And the way that we can sort of create our future is by entering into resonance, etheric resonance, morphic resonance, according to Rupert Sheldrake, with the future that we want. And so I think that's how things like manifestation are mediated. Things like vision boards, you put something on a board and you really think about it, and you're attuning yourself electromagnetically, etherically, to this version of the future, a particular one where there could be a ton of different versions of the future. So yeah, that's kind of how I reconcile those in my mind, of the simultaneity of all things, and the, there's no now or future, but they are in communication with one another and just in this relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that there's manifestation is something that's come onto my radar.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this has been years
Yeah, the
since it's,
secret, you know.
yeah. But I think I'm only now beginning to believe it in a way that makes sense to me, or
Mm-hmm.
believe it in a way that I think makes sense with everything else that I believe in the world.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that that sort of electromagnetic framing, you're tuning yourself to that particular version of a future.
Yeah.
I think that's what seemed the most likely
Mm-hmm.
in my mind. And it's also really optimistic.
Yeah.
It's that's a nice plus.
I like it a lot. Yeah.
I like it a lot, right? So, Drew, you're someone who you really inspire me with all of your well, so many things, but particularly like your exploration in spirituality, your willingness to go 10 days, well, even more than that, really,
Mm.
realistically, multiple times on the meditation Vipassana retreats. Um, and those are things that I have really just started to kind of dip my toes
Mm-hmm.
into. And I'm excited to continue exploring those by myself as well as
Yeah.
with you throughout our friendship.
Mm. Well,
Well,
yeah, it is definitely going to be a huge goal of mine to get you on a Vipassana retreat one day.
I mean, to tell you the truth, especially when you're talking about it here, once my projects wrap up,
Mm-hmm.
which will probably end up being like early next year,
Mhm.
if not before then,
Mm.
that's when I'd like to do it.
Highly recommend it. The center near me actually only live like 20 minutes from
Yeah.
the Rocky Mountain Vipassana Center, which I love. They're only doing them in the summer for now until they build their huge campus. They're going to be able to house 120 students per retreat in the coming years. It's going to be so good. But they're doing small ones now and just only in the summer. So, but there are courses, centers throughout the whole world. There's many in the U.S. The first two I did were in Southeast Georgia, Jessup, Georgia. They have a beautiful center over there.
That would be interesting to go back to Georgia for
Yeah.
that.
Fly in, see your family, and then,
Yeah.
all right, I'm going to go
Yeah.
be gone for 12 days.
No, but I mean, I don't think it's going to take very much. I think it's just, at this point, it's just a matter of like logistics. And I've started to have more seasonality with my job and started to
Mm.
appreciate it more. And so being able to take a couple of months off to not, I mean, I don't mind grinding, especially in the summer,
Mhm.
like it's bright outside for a while. Like I feel like I can work a little bit later. I don't
Mhm.
mind it too much. And then in the winter, I just get to snowboard a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Bummer. So I'm really starting to appreciate that seasonality in life, which I
Mhm.
think, I mean, all this goes back to waves, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's all a
it's
wave,
all
baby.
waves. And it's funny how we live in a world where I think there's so much pressure and emphasis put on this linear trajectory,
Mhm.
and it makes sense, right? When you're younger and you go through grade school, it's like you learn this, it's in year 1, and then year 2, and then year 3, and year 4. It's like every
Mhm.
year you're learning more, blah, blah, blah. And then you get into the corporate world and there's a lot of structure around raises, and you get,
Oh,
you
yeah.
get a raise this year and then next year. And my professional life has not been linear whatsoever in terms of income, in terms of location, in terms of job, everything. But I think it's been a really good lesson for me to learn that nothing in life is linear or as linear as we want it to be. And
Oh,
I think
no.
throwing that concept away entirely and realizing it's all ebbing and flowing.
All
There's
ebbing and
ups
flowing.
and downs.
I mean, how torturous it would be to only move forward, you know? Like, I would not be who I am now without the hardest, most frustrating, you know, suffering filled experiences of my life that, you would never wish that for somebody, but you kind of would, because that's how we grow. Like, we need the ebb and flow. Like, we really need it.
The idea that you wouldn't wish that on someone, but you also wouldn't not wish.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like it's hard when, like I've been. There's something that came across my radar that was just like, it was like a movie or something, and
Mhm.
someone died, but it was like a character that like I really didn't want to see die.
Ugh.
And I was like, oh, that's so sad.
Mm.
But then I was like, but that's also life.
Yeah.
It's part of it. And it's different if it's murder, right?
Mhm.
That's a little bit harder pill to swallow, because that's a choice that a human made rather than something happening more organically, right?
Mhm.
But you can't have the good without the bad. You
You
can't have
really
the bad
can't.
without the good.
You have to have the bad to be able to appreciate the good. I mean,
Yeah.
even, I mean, Donald Trump, he has lived a life full of privilege and an infinite amount of money and opportunity and is everything you would want, right? He's the president of the United States, probably one of the most miserable people on the whole planet, I think. Think of all like a celebrity, right? People grow up, they're like, oh, I'd love to be a celebrity. Like, all we hear about from that realm are people getting divorced and having terrible times. Like, there's no, like, there's no only good. And so you have to have, like, there's no getting out of those hard experiences. It's built into our perceptions. I think that there's almost an even balance. And so if you never expose yourself to things that are actually hard and challenging, I know we've talked about this before,
Yeah.
then things that are not hard or challenging at all are going to feel like the end of the world.
100%. When I moved to Australia, all the time I got the question, why'd you choose to move? And it kind of bothered me. And I didn't realize really why it bothered me until later. And I remember someone who I would certainly consider a friend. She was like, you don't need to move across the world in order to have a change or whatever. I was like, I don't know, but it just feels like I need to. It feels like I need to. And I think really what it came down to is I just realized that I wanted to subject myself to something really difficult. I wasn't sure why. I didn't understand what the driving factor was for that. But I was like, I just want to do something difficult. And I've come to really fucking appreciate that. And I've come to really to recognize like there's actually nothing wrong with choosing to do something that's hard simply because. At the end of the day, if you choose to do something difficult, whatever the motivation was, if there was even an alternative or an additional motivation, at the end of the day, you're evolving, you're growing, and you're becoming stronger because of it.
Yeah.
And I love you said this a couple of moments ago, that kind of our purpose, in a sense, is to create a future that we desire. Well, you're not going to create a future that you desire if you're not growing and you're not evolving and you're not becoming a better version of yourself. So who cares what the motivation is, as long as you're doing it.
Yeah, going back to the, etheric resonance, if you are resonating with, what in your mind is the ideal future, right? It's going to come with a lot of suffering and a lot of hardship. I say the ideal future, it's, that's kind of hard to characterize, but to become the person you want to be, you're going to have to grow, and we grow through hardship. That's the only way. Lessons are hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always been someone who struggled to learn lessons when it's been like told and taught at me.
Yeah.
It's like, because there's so many things that I've learned, that I've been told, that I also ended up ignoring, doing, and then learning the lesson.
Yep.
So it's like, on one hand, I could have learned that lesson a lot easier. But on the other hand, I clearly fucking couldn't, because I didn't learn the lesson. So it does take that. I mean, something as simple as like falling the other day on your frames.
Oh,
The 5 wheels. It took me a fall on that. Then I was like, fuck, you know what? I learned my lesson. I have to be more aware of the length of the wheelbase of these wheels, of these. I'm talking about rollerblades for those who didn't understand. So yeah, I think I've definitely started to really appreciate that. There's a lot of bad, but there is no objective bad. There's no objective good. Everything has both. And I think it's your responsibility, it's your duty, and it's a tremendous blessing that you have the opportunity, the agency, whatever you want to call it, to decide what are the things I want to take that are good.
Yeah.
And what are the things that I'm going to take that are bad. And, I think I probably shared this, but I believe optimism is just the election to weigh the good in the world, in whatever's happening to you, greater than you weigh the bad.
Yeah. I think I had went through some challenges earlier this year, and I really think a great state to be in is, even in the middle of the challenges, to try and be thankful for them. It's like, thank you so much for this lesson that I'm I'm learning it right now. It's very hard. Thank you, but I pray I'm delivered from it soon, kind of thing.
Yeah. That reminds me of something that shifted in sort of my concept of money. Is I was reading a book that talks about being grateful for money coming in and going out.
Ooh, yeah.
So, thinking about paying rent or paying, a mortgage payment and being grateful for the reality that you can make those payments. I'm grateful I have the money in my bank account. I can afford a home that I love in a place that I chose, in a location that suits me. And I think too often we think about money going out as, oh, this is,
oh no, I don't have the money anymore.
Yeah. And I get it too. There's definitely been times where things have been a lot tighter, and I'm coming to a time where things are a little bit tighter, but that's gonna change. But yeah, I think there's, I don't know. I've really appreciated exploring spirituality a lot more because I think it just fundamentally made my viewpoint on life so much more optimistic.
Yeah, I really don't see the alternative. I mean, I know what the alternative is, but yeah, I'm coming up on an expense that I'm really not happy about myself. Having to fix my tractor after a friend of mine kind of flipped it and then blew up the engine. So that's a pretty rough one to take on board, but I'm very thankful that there are people who can fix the tractor, people who make new engines for the tractor, and then I will have it again. It's gonna not be fun to have that go out, but it's gonna be very nice to have the tractor.
Could you put like a bigger diesel into it? Like if you're gonna replace it, why don't just
I didn't ask about that, but yeah, a little turbo diesel, give me from like 23 horsepower to 33 maybe.
That would be awesome. Yeah. And I mean, you wouldn't. That would be a fun project. Let's turbo your tractor.
Let's do it. Get a little turbo and bolt it on somehow.
I mean, you'd have to swap out some parts. That would be a fun project.
Infinite projects on the farm. That's why I moved there. Yeah.
Do you feel like the farm, like it seems like rollerblading and just random bullshit around the farm are like the biggest hobbies in Drew's life? Is there anything else out there?
What else is there in terms of hobbies? I've really been diving into music a lot more lately.
Cool.
I used to, I've grown up playing guitar since I was, I guess, 12 or so, but diving back into it more and into singing more. I did a lot of musical theater as a child. And
do you have any videos?
I'm sure they exist. I'm sure my parents have some, but yeah, I was in a lot of church choir productions and things like that. But after my voice changed, I didn't sing a ton. I would do some open mics here or there in college that I like doing, but over the past few years, I really kind of let that part of my life go. But I've actually started taking singing lessons again a few months ago that I've been just to get back to the point where I enjoy singing again. I'm not worried about how I sound.
Yeah.
And I've been really enjoying that. That's been really nice. Again, this challenging time earlier this year that I was talking about, I found myself wanting just an outlet to express myself, and like, music is a great way to do that. Like, my favorite songs are the songs where you can really feel in the voice of the singer the emotions that they're trying to, to display. And it's a great way to get them out, and it is. So if I
do you have a go-to belt it song?
Ooh, yeah. I'm not sure I energetically resonate so much with the lyrics, but I really love Tracy Chapman, Give Me One Reason.
Nice.
I love that one. That's a really good one.
Classic. My belt it song is Bad Religion, Frank Ocean.
I don't know if I know that one. Do I know it? Have I heard it? I'm sure I've heard it.
Maybe. I'll play it later. Okay. I don't think I'm going to sing it. But that's a fun one. Actually, it's funny. I had my windows down and I was just blaring that in the on like driving around here, and there's a cop car that was like, we were just kind of near each other the whole time. And I was just screaming my head off to some Frank. And as we were driving, it started driving the same speed as me.
Ooh.
And I was like, oh no, am I doing something wrong? And so I looked, and turns out my buddy, I know him from the gym. He's a cop.
Oh.
And he was like, hey, and I was like, Kevin, dude. I was like, so good.
Wow,
I was like,
nice.
what's happening? It's like, did you just hear me?
Let's get in the front
belting
row
it?
seat to your performance.
Yeah. I don't believe he heard anything, which is, I don't know if that's good or bad. I think it probably would have been entertaining for him. Not
would have
good,
enjoyed that.
entertaining. Yeah. Yeah. Were you singing it all in the last part of the festival, or maybe not the last, but one other feature that we didn't mention, the Cuddle Puddle.
Oh, the Cuddle Puddle. That was really nice. Yeah. I actually didn't plan most of the festival. There's this other group of friends that I was introduced to. They were looking for a space to throw one, and I got connected with them. And the lead up to the festival, I was actually camping in Montana the whole previous week. Just had a beautiful time. And when I was actually out camping when they released the festival map of the grounds, and I saw the Cuddle Puddle. I was like, yes, that's going to be great. Because that was a huge theme of the camping trip as well. At night, we would put all the pillows and blankets near the fire, and it's all kind of soup up. And
it's so good with camping too.
Yeah, so nice.
I did one of the first weeks I was in Australia, I did a 5 or 6 day backpacking trip around Kosciuszko, which is the tallest mountain in Australia. Its elevation it's like 6,000 feet. It's lower than I'm pretty sure it's lower than your farm, but beautiful experience nevertheless. And one of the days we had just put our camp, and then the next morning we were gonna do a pretty long hike, and right after we had our camp all set up, I think we went to bed, and it started thunderstorming. Came down. So the next morning we were supposed to do this hike, and it was just still torrential. So we all just ended up just bopping from tent to tent. And so we would have 6, 7 people in one tent. We're all drinking hot chocolate together. It was
but you were so thankful for the thunderstorm afterwards. Yeah.
Yes. And it was one of those where, one of those moments where if you gave me the choice, it's going to rain or it's going to be clear skies. There is no doubt in my mind I would have elected for clear skies, right? But in hindsight, afterwards, right, I wouldn't have had any other way.
Right.
It was the best thing in the world, to be able to grow closer to the people. We were backpacking for 4 or 5 days. We did plenty of hiking and viewing. It's okay if we have 12 hours of thunderstorm. Also, that was my first time ever camping in a thunderstorm. You put that rain fly up right, you'll be sweet.
You're good.
You're good. As long as I'm not dripping wet, my socks aren't wet. I mean, my socks were wet through the hiking part, sure. And it ended up clearing up in the afternoon. We had a beautiful hike anyway.
Oh,
but,
nice. Amazing.
Yeah, it literally could not have gone any better. So, it's camping and having that you're in the middle of nowhere, and I'm sure you had no service where you were.
Very little.
Yeah, very little. And so, being able to just completely turn off from the outside world, but it also makes you really want to connect with those people around you.
Yeah, it's this thunderstorm is affording just that much more connection with the people who presumably you went there to connect with. Yeah. So it's a, little power up, connection power up or something 100%. Like that.
And I knew 0 of them going into it.
Oh, wow.
I knew the one. So I had the day I got to Sydney, I booked my hostel either on the plane or when I landed. All I had was a plane ticket and a visa for a year.
Wow.
I mean,
one-way ticket, baby.
One-way ticket. Ooh. Best way to travel. I fucking love one-way tickets. And when I landed, I booked the hostel. When I got I arrived at the hostel, and I was waiting in line to check in, and there's a woman in front of me who had a really thick Australian accent. So I just jokingly turned to her. I'm like, well, you didn't travel very far. And she's like, oh no, man, I'm from Foxcraft. What? I thought you guys speak English here. What did you just about to say? And so we got to chatting, and turns out she ran meditation, breath work retreats,
beautiful
hiking retreats. And she had one the following weekend. Person had dropped out, and she was just like, look,
no way.
Yeah. She was like, dude, if you want to do it, come on. And she's invited a few people before, and they've been really wishy-washy and and unable to actually go through with it. But I was like, I literally could not think of a better thing to do. So for the next week, every day I text her. I'm like, what do I need? And she sent me a list of things. I was like, hey, I can get this, this, and this. I brought a good chunk of camping gear, or like, I didn't bring a tent, and I didn't bring, like a stove or little shit like that. Right. But I had like my backpack, I had clothes, hiking boots, all that shit. And so I just texted her back every day. Like, this is what I got. And she was like, I'm shocked you're falling through this. Like,
she did not expect it.
When she told me afterwards, she's like, part of the reason why I didn't really give you a whole lot is because like I've offered to provide people with everything they could need, full backpack, pack, everything, and then they back out. So I'm doing that. So if you really want to go, great. It's a free ticket.
Have a little skin in the game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you have to actually go out of your way for it. Like, that's totally fair. And that's exactly what happened. I ended up having to pick up most of the stuff, but so when I got there, before I even got there, she just texted me a name of a guy, Chris, and said, he'll pick you up at your hostel and drive you down. And so I get a text from Chris. He says, hey, I'm Chris. I'm going to be picking you up. No, I don't even think I had a last name. Maybe I had a last name.
Just Chris.
But like, even if I did, what am I going to fucking do? Look for Facebook and see 1,000 people with this name and 0 mutual friends. There wasn't really an option for me to even know him. So he picked me up and we have a 6-hour drive together talking about life. He's a
total
stranger.
Wow.
Like, just picks me up in his car. One stranger meets another stranger. And so everyone there, with the exception of Chelsea, the person who I'd met prior, and with the sort of exception of Chris, who I met along the ride, I did not know a single person.
Wow.
But it was such a beautiful mixture of people. Like, there are people from, there's a guy who was on a TV show called was it Alone, where they just throw you. I think his was in New Zealand.
I think I've heard of that. Yeah.
Throw you in New Zealand with like a backpack with 4 things in it, and you just have to see who lasts the longest, or who doesn't fucking die or whatever. They were just such an interesting group of people. And it was really special to do that, being the only non-Australian there. I moved there to experience the culture there, and I'm meeting people who've lived.
I bet everybody wanted to talk to you. Goodness. The only American on this crazy breathwork meditation backpacking trip. That's amazing.
Yeah. They're like, how'd you get here? I'm like, I ran into Chelsea a week ago. They're like, what? Yeah. Met her at the hostel. And even her mom, who I met later on in my truck time. I met her mom in Perth because her parents lived in WA. So when I got out to the Western Coast 7 months later, 6 months later, I ended up meeting back up with Chelsea, met her son, met her mom. But yeah, even her mom like joked that I was like dude from the hostel or something like that, which came kind of a theme, like, because I would just find strangers and they would say, hey, I got a van. I went to a festival with some of the people I met at the retreat.
Wow.
Went to a festival, met a girl who was living out of a van for the last 3 years, 2 years. And she was like, do you want to go up north I'm going to be up there for a week or so. Do you want to come with me? And I was like, I literally have nothing better to do. And then it was just it's such a beautiful snowball. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, everyone there, it's like every stranger. I was equally as fascinated with all the strangers as I think they were with me. But it's always interesting being in a place where you are sort of like, oh, you're the tourist. Well, it's like, I'm just a dude. I'm just here. Did you feel that way at the festival when people came up to you like, you're Drew?
Yeah, I really did. That was a really interesting part of the festival, because again, I was on mushrooms for Saturday, and yeah, so much was being projected onto me. That was a lot to hold. It was a lot of energy. But I was very grateful for it. But yeah, wow, that was a lot for sure.
I can imagine. Yeah, I'll never forget that. The modeling thing was, I'll never forget that. The fashion show.
Had you ever done anything like that before?
No. No. I'd never. I was talking to Evan from Dust. I was sharing a little bit about with him, and I was like, I've just never felt. He's like, you felt like a star. That's the only way I could put it. I felt like a star.
You looked like a star. You were behaving like a star. I really liked it.
I still haven't even seen like pictures or videos of it, so I don't even know what.
I know a large edit is on the way. Yeah, the person who organized the whole thing has been sourcing all the videos from everyone. So yeah, there's going to be, I'm sure, a big edit.
Yeah, such a blast. Yeah. Is there anything that's been on your mind that you want to discuss?
So I'm diving back into sobriety right now. I did so earlier this year as well. I had a particularly challenging living situation on the farm last year through sort of November. Had a friend living with me, and the relationship really deteriorated and went really really bad. To the point it was. I'm not going to get into specifics, but it was so bad that somebody else actually needed to come stay with me after he left. Related to that, kind of confusing, but all that to say, I really didn't have my own space for quite a while. And it was February of this year when I finally had the farm to myself, really for the first time since moving there. And I used that as an opportunity to like really dive into my spiritual practice. I was meditating, 2 hours a day. That's what they recommend after you leave Vipassana. They say, an hour in the morning, an hour at night. And I was really strict with that. And, sometimes I would do a 2 hour session on its own. I really didn't even time them. But things got pretty subjectively weird for a little while. I was really, really, really diving in, and I really kind of had to pull the ripcord because things are getting a little too weird for me. And I had a particularly challenging experience that made me okay. I had to back off a little bit and ground myself. I was getting a little too luciferic, I think. And so I'm diving back in now. I feel more prepared this time. I feel more grounded going back in now. But as part of this, I do a lot of the exercises in the book that I've let you borrow, How to Know Higher Worlds. And it's about sort of opening up your, or trying to develop your spiritual senses to perceive, people talk about perceiving auras and things like that in this book, How to Know Higher Worlds. It's really sort of a step-by-step guide for trying to develop those spiritual organs that can detect those things. And I don't really have like a conclusion here, but one of the exercises, sort of the first one that they recommend is contemplating life and death, arising, passing away, blooming, withering, feeling where something is spiritually, energetically along its path. That's some of the most stark non-physical energy that you can be met with, I think, in somebody's life is where they are on this path. Eventually it becomes manifest in the physical world, and in this past, stint of being totally sober since the fest, I'm, back meditating again, of, bumping up my sessions, hour and a half a couple days ago, hour yesterday, and really trying to open myself up to those things. And one thing that's been really stark in my experience is the point along that path that my older dog is in right now, Karu. I really didn't think I was going to get emotional on the podcast. Wow. She just turned 9.
Sweet, sweet.
I love Karu so much. And that's kind of one of the things I'm like, no, she's going to live forever. She's going to be around forever. But, she's not. And really, and you can see it on her, she's, graying a little bit, and she's not as fast as she used to be. And, I think that's one of the things when you open yourself up to things like that, you're opening yourself up to things you like that are good and things that you might not like to experience. And that's one thing this past week that's really been very stark in my experience with dealing with her is, she's towards the end, and that's really hard to deal with. It's such a core part of life that we should all be, very familiar with. But yeah, it's a rough one. She's been my little girl for 9 years. So yeah, that's been tough.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, well, thanks for listening. You know Karu. She's such a light. I love her so much.
She is one of the sweetest little things in the world. I'm so grateful I got to be there on her 9th birthday too.
So good.
She's just so sweet. Yeah. So the last thing I wanted to talk to you about a little bit was the YouTube video that you sent me.
So that was, right at the tail end of, 2 hours a day of meditation for quite a long time. And just had a lot of stuff that I felt like I wanted to talk about that I think is important for people who are on a path of trying to seek and know,
Yeah.
to bring on board. And I really didn't expect it to go anywhere. I was just like, well, I have some things I think I'd like to share, so I'm gonna hit record and see how it turns out. And you haven't really shared it around anywhere. You and my sister, a couple other people, but turned out better than I expected. So
Yeah. Well, I think it does such a good job of like making it so clear that the physical body and our experience and our cognitive experience is only a small percentage of what our holistic experience is. So the part I wanted to talk to you a little bit about specifically was the front end of it, where you talked about you are not your thoughts,
mhm.
right? So before we get into that further, can you just give a quick high level overview so that people can understand sort of where I'm going to
Yeah,
take this later?
yeah. So I feel like people, likely if they're listening to this podcast, they're likely familiar with the concept of people saying you're more than your thoughts. Like you're not just your thoughts. And it's so much, it's so true. It's like more true than true. It's so true. People, we think we have this experience of authoring our thoughts. We think I'm thinking, it's me thinking, but they're so swayed by so many things over which we have no control. Um, Just an example I used in the little talk, try not to think of a pink elephant right now. Good luck. Um, we had no control over, level one, the language we speak. Most people think in language. You have no control usually over the languages that you speak. Most people speak one language. It just happens to be the language you were born into, and that happens to be the language you think in, and that totally colors and couches the experience you're able to have.
Do you think in language?
Less now. A lot less now.
Less now.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think I probably mentioned the podcast Very Bad Wizards. Maybe not. Oh, okay. It's like a philosopher, psychologist. Tamler Summers,
Ooh,
Dave Pizarro.
perfect combo.
I probably got them. I may Tamler Summers would be the philosopher,
Mhm.
and Dave Pizarro is the psychologist. They're reading a study on people who think in language,
Mhm.
people who don't think in language.
Mm.
Which may not be super surprising to you, think have only ever experienced thinking thoughts in English.
Mhm.
Um, which makes sense because I'm pretty good at articulating my thoughts. And the reason why I'm good at articulating my thoughts is because there's not a translation layer there.
Right.
Or there is, but it's pre-thought.
Mhm.
Whereas for people who think of things and it's just abstract, right? Um, they then have to go through the translation layer to
Yeah.
speak those.
Mhm.
I've never heard of someone who's evolved, who's changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that's like do you think that's because like we've talked about this, how like language is just shitty.
Yeah. It's so slow.
It's so
Yeah.
slow. It's subject to so much error, so much
Mhm.
misinterpretation. There's the potentially choosing the wrong word, and then there's also the potential of the listener to hear the wrong thing or interpret it
Mhm.
incorrectly, yada yada yada. Where do you think you attribute to that change? Do you think it's like a tapping into the collective consciousness more genuinely so that there's no translation necessary? You're just interpreting it?
I think in my experience, I think it was because it was really after my second Vipassana retreat that the change really started to happen. And I think it has to do with getting closer to the source of the thoughts. Yeah, something closer to that collective unconscious from which thoughts arise. That if you can become comfortable without having to have language in your mind, and experience just the concepts and the images and sort of I call them like packets.
Mm.
Then I feel like your ability to think can really open up where you're no longer limited by the English language. And then if you want to, again, translate those to somebody else, you have to go through the translation layer. But then I think what ends up being communicated is much actually closer to the actual thought that you had, if that makes sense.
So once you go through that translation, you are sort of able to better understand the concept.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
When I'm explaining something to somebody, it's come from somewhere pre-linguistic. I
Yeah.
think Because I think that's where our intentions come from is a we adopt our intentions. I think I said this in talk wordlessly. We aim at
Yes.
something wordlessly and then thoughts come. And so if you're more in tune with those intentions first, um, and why you're having those intentions, then you're more in this world of like imagining how the intentions play out on a larger scale and, the implications of them. And language really doesn't come in so much until you get to the point where you're imagining talking with somebody else, or you're imagining, um, you know, you're recalling a conversation you had in the past to give some context to the now, or, um, yeah, I really think for most people who are habitually thinking, they're thinking without being aware that they're thinking. Language is one of the worst ways to do it.
Mm.
Um, I think if we're spending time in thought intentionally, whatever goal you're trying to achieve by thinking is much better served in a pre-linguistic state, if that makes sense. I'm not saying that, one should strive to do that. It's something that happens rather than something that you do.
Mm. So it kind of sounds to me like if you really truly know a subject, you're able to teach it on like a 5-year-old level,
Mm-hmm.
almost like that, where like if you have to go through the exercise of talking, of saying it, then you sort of have to jump through all the hoops of deeply, deeply understanding
Yeah,
it first.
because you're not just regurgitating the exact language that you've thought in the past and re-saying it. You've thought about the concept.
Right.
You've like really been in the concept. And then when it comes to explain it, you don't have to think about the words.
Right.
They just come.
And I think that if there's sort of a misunderstanding from the listener, you're able to adapt the words in order to educate them on it. So it's not
Yeah.
about because if you're just memorizing, something, then you're not going to be able to adapt it for someone else's knowledge because
Right.
you can't. All you know
That's
is
all you have is
that's
the
all you
one
have.
version.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Um, yeah, I really don't think like getting back into, we're not our thoughts. Like,
Mhm.
there's just so much about our internal experience that we're just like, if you really think about it, to think a thought, wouldn't you have to think it before you think, or to author a thought, wouldn't you have to think it before you think it? Like when we experience a thought, it's like for the first time, what are you going to think next? What am I going to say next? That's an example Sam Harris used. Like it's the same. Like the next thing that comes into my mind is as surprising to me as the next thing you're going to say.
Mm.
Um, and I think we get ourselves in a lot of trouble when we believe ourselves to be authoring our thoughts, because oftentimes we're exposed to so much negative media. If I scroll on any social media app, it's people getting mad at each other, people arguing, people saying, I'm right, you're wrong, and that just becomes what fills our consciousness. And if you think that's you, like what a world of trouble you're in?
Yeah. But it is obviously modulated by what we consume.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
'Cause
something. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because I'm thinking of like for, you know, telepathic nonverbal autists, right?
Mm,
If they are able to hear your thoughts, right? And they sort of Kai Dickens goes to talk about how they are some of the most honest, sincere,
yeah.
genuine, caring human beings on this
Mm,
planet. In fact, it's very difficult for them not to be honest. It's very difficult for them to have malintent. And when they're observing, hearing other people's thoughts, where I'm going is like, if I were in the room with someone right now who knew what I was thinking, are they going to look at
mm,
me like you are a fucking piece of shit? Or
right.
you,
Yeah.
right? And so it's a little, I guess it's comforting. On one hand, it's comforting to know that, those thoughts aren't mine. But on the other hand, it's also my it's my responsibility to ensure that I am not, the shittier my thoughts are, then that's a representation of everything around me being
Right.
worse.
Yeah.
So it's still a responsibility of yours to um sort of position yourself such that the thoughts you are experiencing are not repugnant,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but it's also you shouldn't feel the blame entirely for everything that's going on in your brain.
Precisely. Yeah. I'm not saying we shouldn't endeavor to cultivate the quality of our thoughts.
Yes.
That is something I believe we can do. The specific content, what ends up appearing in consciousness, that is the result of an infinite series of things over many of which we had no control. But in that talk that I mentioned, or that I recorded, um, I really think that the quality of our thoughts are determined by two things. One of which is our intention. Again, we adopt those wordlessly. That's pre-thought. It's what are we aimed at? What are we attuned to? How are we etherically vibrating? So what do we want? What are we aimed at? And then how are we resonating? Like, are we in a high vibration aimed at love, or are we in a low vibration aimed at disconnection? And those two things together, I think, culminate in what we end up experiencing as thought. So we should really endeavor to cultivate the quality of them, but allow yourself the freedom to not engage with every thought that comes in as if you authored it and feel responsible for it. I mean, that's Rosicrucianism has the 6 basic exercises, and the first of which is cultivating control over your thoughts. Like, that's just it. Because that eventually bleeds into the rest of our lives. If you're thinking, you have an intention. If there's thoughts in your head, you have adopted an intention, whether you know it or not. And so trying to become aware of what that intention is very, very, very important. I think a lot of people are really unaware about what their really deep intentions are moment to moment, rather than just becoming comfortable or staying comfortable. And then 2 is trying to align yourself to the good and to connection and to love, rather than disconnection and power and authority and things like that.
Yeah. Well, Drew, thank you so much
Dude,
for your
Anthony,
time.
has been such a pleasure. Wow. I don't know how long we've been going, but this has been so fun. This has been really great experience. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. We really got in there.